Hi everybody, Matt back with you. Hope you're okay. Well, we're currently in that very strange period of time between Christmas and New Year where nobody knows what day it is. However, today is Saturday and I also can't get very far at the moment. The trains have got engineering problems. There's a huge hole in the main road leading out towards Hebden, so I'm kind of stuck in Todmorden. So I decided to come and look at a location we have been to a couple of times already on this channel. And the last time I was here, I did say I wasn't going to come back to film it again. But some of the comments I got made me think I needed to dig a little bit deeper into a story that was being suggested about the location. And although I couldn't find any answers to that specific story, it did uncover unspeakable tragedy. Let me take you to a barn. So I'm heading to Rodwell End in Todmorden, which is just up above the train line at Lob Mill Stables. And we've been to look at East Rodwell End Farm a couple of times in the dark and in the snow. It's an old ruin that reminds me very much like the Blair Witch House. That's why I filmed it a couple of times. Surprisingly, it's actually suddenly come up for sale, but it's been abandoned and derelict for over 50 years. And the reason I've come back is because of those comments that were saying that there was a story that I hadn't told about the farm, and that story was that a lady lived there and potentially she'd committed murdered her children in the barn, and then I don't know whether she'd set the house on fire or something else had happened. It all was a little bit complicated, and then I also got another message kind of confirming that story, but I can't tell that story without some kind of physical evidence and proof. I hope the people who put the comments understand that. If it's folklore, it's different, or if it's a myth or a legend. And Tom and I have browsed and searched, and we couldn't find anything to go along with that story. But what we did uncover was a number of stories, not from the farm, but what had been going on in the barn over like the last 100 years. And we uncovered suicide after suicide after suicide. And I thought, for a historical document only, we will cover that story today. So Rodwell End, which is kind of a hamlet of houses and at one point a church, was once known as Todmorden's ghost town because roughly 1970s, early 1970s, every building there was completely abandoned. Everything, even the church. And over time, people have come in, they've renovated and restored, and most of the buildings, I think, are now lived in, apart from one, which is East Rodwell End Farm, which is kind of a bit further out of the way from the rest of the hamlet. And quite often it's also occupied by cows that live in the field. So, like I say, we've covered the farm before. The farm is currently up for sale. So, this video is not intended to try and cease sales or anything like that. There is tragedy in a number of old houses. It's just one of those things that happens. But the number of tragedies in the barn is quite extraordinary. So, as mentioned, obviously for this video, we're now going to talk about themes about suicide. And I'm quite aware a lot of people will find it very difficult. If you don't want to watch this one, please skip over it. Everything is going to be done as respectfully as possible. I don't have any stigma attached to suicide due to my own situation and past, so I can talk about it quite openly. Hopefully that won't come across as disrespectful. It's just telling the story. So yeah, if you want to watch something a little bit happier, there's plenty of other things on the channel. But let's head to the farm. So out of the trees and into the field, and in a moment we should get our first look at the farm, and there it is. So all the information we have today comes from the British newspaper archive, and Tom has found all these for me. I don't have the years and dates of happenings, unfortunately, so I'm not going to do them in any order. They are all, we'll take them all equally, so don't think there's anything specific, but we will start with the story of Arthur Greenwood. Arthur Greenwood was a farmer who lived at East Rodwell End Farm and was 37 years old. He'd recently suffered a life-changing injury. The previous week, he had been attending to his horse, putting a strap around it, but the metal buckle of the strap had slipped and pierced his eye. He refused to seek medical attention. The next day, he carried a calf on his shoulders to Eastwood, half a mile away. Later that same day, Arthur was found dead here in the barn from suicide. A medical examiner said Arthur's eye had been perforated and he must have been in tremendous pain. The next person is 54-year-old James Greenwood. James Greenwood had been a farmer in Todmorden for 29 years and had lived at East Rodwell End Farm for 25 years. He was found by his son, Arthur Greenwood, hanging by a rope from a beam in this barn. James had previously spent 9 months in a mental hospital when he was in his 20s due to worries about farming during the war. His daughter had been sent to work in chicken hatcheries in Hebden Bridge, but he tried to keep her at home. 10:30 p.m. She had shouted that it was time for supper. This was the last time he was seen alive. He said he was going to go out and turn the horse out of the stable. They never heard the horse put out and went to check, and they found James suspended from a beam in the hayloft. A jury at the inquest into his passing gave a verdict of suicide whilst of an unsound mind. And just a few years later, his son Arthur took his own life in the barn. So next we have James Hargreaves. He was only a teenager and had been on a night out with his girlfriend, and they had bad falling out that particular night. And whether he was drunk, depressed, or a mixture of everything together, I'm not really sure. But unfortunately, James also came into the barn here after that night out. James Hargreaves, A young man of Rodwell End Farm was of sober, steady, and industrious habits, and esteemed by all for his general character. He had just attended the anniversary service at Shaw Baptist Chapel on the Sunday, and was returning home in the company of a young woman. A difference had arisen between them, and they parted on rather unpleasant terms. The teenage boy was in the depths of grief and went into the barn and hung himself. An inquest into his passing returned a verdict of temporal insanity. Finally, we have the story of another farmer, Samuel Lord. Samuel Lord, 56, of Rodwell End Farm, committed suicide by hanging himself in the barn. Samuel had suffered from influenza and had never thoroughly recovered. He told his wife he was at the far end of despair. He told his daughter he was heading out to watch a funeral, but she was the one who later found him in the barn. So there we go, folks. That is the story of the tragedy of Rodwell End Farm. Now, the original story about the lady and potential murder took place here. Again, I'm not discounting it. It probably is true, but I need something to kind of back it up to be able to tell that story. So who knows, I may end up back here again one day, although it may well sell in the meantime and somebody else will be here, in which case we won't be able to. But yeah, very tragic stories, and it was incredible when I was kind of waiting for Tom to send me the information through, and everything that kept coming through was just these awful tales. So yeah, I hope it's not a happy one, this one, is it? Obviously, but we are called the dark side of the moor, and this very much is the dark side of the moor. So hopefully you've not been affected by anything in the video. Hopefully we've done it respectfully. But yeah, to the 4 people who couldn't find a way past the situation they were in, I sincerely hope you found peace, and that your families found their peace in time as well. Yeah, keep talking, everybody. That's the way to solve it, hopefully. Keep talking. Don't let your problems build up. Just get everything out in the open. Somebody will help, I promise. I'll leave it at that. We will see you for one last video before the end of the year. Take care. Till next time.